Hey guys, what's going on? It's your boy Soul Secure from MBT Studio. Okay, so today we have the fostex massdrop tx0 headphones right over here. Now this headphone is one of the most modified headphones out there. It's based off the TR50 Mark II, and it's a planar magnetic headphone. Impedance is 50 ohms. There you go for the people who care about the specs. Now this headphone gives me a little bit of nostalgia, as well as other things that I'll talk about in this video. But first off, let's get into the build quality. So the build quality here on top, there's two bands here, and the first band over here is leather. You can definitely smell that it's leather, and it says fostex on the top, rubber, and it is very comfortable. It is quite extremely comfortable. I really enjoyed playing games with it. More on that later. But anyways, the cable here is a locking mechanism, so you turn it to lock. The cable is 6.6 foot long, terminates in a 1/4 inch. Without the adapter, there's no adapter on here, so if you are looking to drive this with your phone, more on that later, you really can't, unless you get a separate cable. Even then you can't, and we'll talk about that as we go along. Now in terms of build quality, I think the headphones really nailed it. The headband is extremely comfortable, and the sliding mechanism here I really like. It's smooth. You don't have to click anything, and it is large enough so that it will fit the largest head, in my opinion. I mean, that's gigantic. So for my head, just as reference here, so I just put it on, and well, it fits right off the bat, and it's relatively a minimalistic style. And although you don't really want to wear this outside, this is semi-open back headphone, which means the sound will leak in and out of the headphone. Now, let's just take the pads off. Now, to take the pads off, it's a little bit tricky here. Give me a minute. So the pads are plush, velour on the outside and pleather all together. Very nice pad. I like it very much. Now if you see the driver here, which is probably hard to see in the video, it's basically a square planar magnetic driver here, and you can probably see it in this angle. Okay, so this headphone has been heavily modified by many people and ranges from a few $100s to a few $1,000s, and it really varies. I've heard few modified ones that were really good and some that were not so good. But today we're reviewing just the headphone as it is. I'm gonna have my buddy Tujen, who's another member at this MBT Studio. I'm going to have him modify this headphone, and then we'll give it a listen and rate his work, review his work. Now with that being said, we do have few headphones in this price range for comparison. The first is the very first headphone that I've ever owned in my life, the Sennheiser HD598. And the reason the fostex actually brings me nostalgia is because of this headphone over here. Now, with that being said, I find this, the Sennheiser 598, to be a much better headphone all around, and we'll get into that in a minute. But basically, this headphone over here was my first very headphone, and it's what got me really into hi-fi. I always knew there was hi-fi, but this is the headphone that blew my mind away, and you know the story, the never-ending journey. And it also helped me out when it was the worst time of my life, and music really hit me deep. A little bit cheesy here, but it really hit me deep, and it's what got me into this hobby. And now with that being said, when I reviewed the fostex headphone over here, my impression was that this headphone is something that a beginner would purchase at this price point. And my real question in reviewing this headphone was not so much the highs, the mids, and bass. Of course, I'll get into that, but basically, will it bring someone into the world of hi-fi? Will it blow their mind away, the way the 598s did for me? And in my opinion, I think it will. I think it will in the end story. But for all intents and purposes, if you're watching this video to find your very first hi-fi headphone, then I think that the 598s over here is a better choice. Now, there's a few reasons, I'll get into it. But I just want to go over all the headphones that I'm comparing first. So I have the HiFiMan HE400S here, which retailed for much more. Now you can find it for much less, which is, HiFiMan headphones are always, the price range is a little bit funky here and there, but that's just the way it is. So here, it's a little bit more expensive than the fostex, but you can certainly get it used, I guess, for that price. And the 400S here is a better headphone than the 598 or the fostex. Let's just leave it at that. And then the 400i, and by the way, I did review all these headphones before, so just go back to the reviews if you want to know more about these headphones specifically. The 400i here is the best out of all the headphones that I just mentioned. Now, when I say the best, I'm categorizing in a few different ways. First one is the bass, the mids, the highs. The transparency is what's most important to me, because without transparency, there's not much separation going on of the instruments, and also the sound stage lacks significantly when things are kind of muffled. Now with the fostex, some will argue, some high-end headphone owners, and when I first got it, I thought as well that it was a little bit muffled, and the muffling doesn't really happen in the vocal range. There is a slight roll off in the high frequency. You don't hear it as much as other headphones, but the muffled region is the bass. The bass kind of doesn't portray transparency like other headphones. Now what I mean by that is the 598s here are much more transparent and much more engaging. It has a larger sound stage because it is a full open back headphone than the fostex. Now with that being said though, the fostex, if you're playing games, and I did mention this in the beginning of the video, I think for the whole purpose of enjoyment of the game that you're playing, like Battlefield, Overwatch, and stuff like this, where there's some rumble and that warmth, this headphone is pretty warm because of that muffle kind of thing going on, and because it has that thing, it really kind of rumbles shit around, for the lack of better words, and it's just really enjoyable. Accurate, not so much, but it's enjoyable. And the 598s, which I depicted as one of the best gaming headphones, is because it is accurate. It's accurate, it has a larger sound stage, and you just can hear the footsteps of your enemies, if you so will, better than the fostex. Now let's talk about driving capability. Now, the most important thing to me when it comes to a headphone is the driving capability, because for a headphone like this, like I said, the beginner will be getting it, and he, like me, at first, would love to drive it just out of the computer, out of a laptop, out of a phone. No, they don't want to own a, let me show you. They don't want to own this stack over here. Okay, so yeah, they don't want to be owning that stack. So with that being said, the fostex kind of falls behind quite significantly at this category, because the fostex is quite hard to drive. Surprisingly, it is 50 ohms, and so is the HD598s. They're both 50 ohms. But the reality is that the 598s over here requires about 30 on my Audio GD NFB 28 amp. 30 volume at 30, it's perfect listening level for me. To get the same level with the fostex, I have to go up to 45. And for the 400S, for the same listening level, I have to go to 40. And then the 400i is a little bit more harder to drive than the 400S. I found 43, 45. So fostex kind of falls on the higher spectrum of that category. Now that's pretty important to me because, you know, like I said, the guy is expecting to drive it out of a computer. Now remember, you can't, because it's not an adapter. It's a solid termination of a 1/4 inch, and you can never change this unless you change the cable. So those are little things that I found this headphone to be a little bit disappointing, where it can improve. Now it's a shame that most of the easy to drive planar magnetic headphones like the LCD X over here is, you know, pretty expensive and high up in there. So in concluding matters, let's talk about the bass, mids, and highs. So the bass region, like I talked about, is a little bit muffled, but it does go down pretty low. I'm not sure if it's the muffle or it's not very well controlled. Let's just put it at that. It's not very well controlled. Hopefully after the modification that my buddy Tujen does, hopefully it will get a little bit better. But it's just the bass is not very controlled and it's not very tight. The mid region is pretty good. The mids and highs are okay. The mids are very smooth. I like the fact that this headphone is not fatiguing in any way. It does have that warmth, so you are automatically engaged to the music. Now, with that being said, some people actually asked me this question. You know, they asked me if the HD58X, which is another massdrop exclusive headphone with Sennheiser. This is fostex and massdrop. This is Sennheiser and massdrop. And this is a headphone that I really like. This headphone by far is the best price to, you know, sound performance ever. A little bit harder to drive, yes, than the fostex. But if you're serious and you're willing to get an amplifier, yes, go for it. Well, let me tell you this way. This headphone is more transparent, it has more bass, it has more of everything. Transparency, soundstage, you name it. The tx0 is like a headphone that's unfinished. And hopefully Tujen, after modifying it, will finish it. And when it's finished, we'll come back here for a review and review his work. But at the moment, I have to go with the 58X. So thank you guys for watching. This was MBT Studios. Make sure you subscribe and like this video, and I'll see you guys in the future.